Well, I don't really know that much about whose idea it was, but it actually is a cemetery for little birds. And I think that there are birds that were people's birds, or maybe birds that would sing in people's gardens. And they have this little cemetery, and the birds are here. And in the entrance, there's a saying that says, "I'm singing to make my little friends, my departed friends, happier." So it's like it's a little bird saying that he is singing around here to
Boa tarde, Senhora Paula.
yeah,
Tudo
to
bem?
tell, to
A lot of poems here.
sort of make the other little birds that have departed happier.
Anyway, your dad loved this cemetery,
Yes,
right?
yes, and I used to come here, me and my sister, when I was a little girl. So it's kind of a
The family legend is that Virginia was conceived in Paqueta.
Right.
Her parents came here on their honeymoon.
Yes, and then
And
many
then continued
times,
to come.
Yes.
And very quickly Virginia
Yes,
was born. So
yes.
that's the family legend.
Right, it may be true, maybe not.
That she was created in Paqueta.
But definitely after I was born, I came here many times when I was a little girl until we left Brazil. So.
Yeah, I'd like to tell you about four of my heroes, four of the great imaginative minds that I view as creators of digital philosophy. I didn't sound too enthusiastic. Sound sort of tired and sad.
Are you tired and sad?
Yeah.
You need some more coffee, water? Yes, we're
camera.
looking at the machine. I should have stood there and smiled.
I should be saying this to you, Virginia.
Yes.
Shouldn't have been saying it to the camera, to the
To the
audience.
camera, you want to say it all over again?
No.
No?
No. Okay, darling. So, did I ever tell you about my childhood heroes, Gödel and Turing?
Well, yes, but I would like to listen to all that again.
Well, I didn't pay much attention to my teachers. I taught myself. I'm completely self-taught. You know that I have my last degree is a high school degree, which I didn't have. I don't have a college degree. I don't have a doctorate. I just have honorary doctorates. So that's because I think you should teach yourself. You shouldn't pay attention to anybody else, and you shouldn't pay attention to what people think is the fashionable questions. You shouldn't pay attention to the funding agencies or the universities. You go out, you look for the ideas that you think are interesting, the questions that need to be thought about, and just start doing it on your own. And this is how I worked. What I was doing for IBM was practical computer engineering and software engineering. They couldn't care less about my theoretical work, but they let me do it as a part-time activity. So by being at an industrial lab where I did work that was useful for a commercial company, for new products, I was completely free to work on any research I wanted to, because this was not what they were paying me for. I wasn't a university professor where there would have been a lot of pressure on me to work on the fashionable subjects.
Oh, yes.
I was a sort of a solitary child.
I see.
And I was always reading. I always had piles of books. In New York, they had a wonderful public library system then, and I would have 20 or 40 books out, read my way through all the books I could get my hands on, including books from the adult section, even though I was a child, or books from the Columbia University stacks later, that normally only professors had access to. Piles of books. And also I always had projects. I was building things.
That sounds like you today
Electrical projects, little logical circuits, collecting minerals in Central Park. Had a microscope, had a chemistry set. Originally I wanted to be a physicist or an astronomer. I was very interested in amateur astronomy. But to be a physicist, you had to know mathematics. Theoretical physics is very mathematical. Then I found, to my surprise, that there are questions in math that are as deep as the question of quantum mechanics or general relativity.
It works beautifully the way we've been doing it, okay? So you don't have to ask me to say anything.
Virginia, would you please comment from your own unique perspective? Please.
Touro, pelo grupo do Novo Cordão, para casa Edson, Rio de Janeiro.
Mathematics is absolutely fundamental to theoretical physics, but it's not absolutely fundamental to biology. Biology seems to be a very different kind of a subject. And however, I believe that we only understand something when we can mathematize it. So if, biologists always say that Darwin's theory of evolution is the fundamental theory of biology and that it's so simple and so basic, it's practically obvious the way they explain it. So if this is the case, there's got to be a deep, clear way to express this in mathematics. I'm a pure mathematician. If it can't be expressed in mathematics, it's muddy thinking, as far as I'm concerned. Also, I don't want mathematics to be left out of biology. So my goal is to define what life is and to prove that it's going to evolve by evolution by natural selection. You see, biology is too messy, too complicated. There are no general rules, right? There are always exceptions. So I'm not going to make a theoretical biology. I'm going to make a toy version or a meta theory. So I'm dealing with a highly simplified version of biology. I'm trying to extract the basic concepts. So first of all, my organisms have no bodies. That's a tremendous simplification. They only have hereditary material. And it's computer software, it's not DNA. Okay, because we don't actually know precisely. DNA looks like a digital algorithmic language, but we don't know it precisely and it's very complicated. So I'm going to instead work with a computer programming language that I can define myself even. What is the goal of my organisms? Well, what these organisms do is they're computer programs, they're software, and they calculate a number, a whole number. So 33, 999, and the bigger the number, the better the organism. The organism's goal is to name a very, very large number. And this may seem like a trivial problem But it turns out that there are very concise ways to name extremely big numbers. This is known as the busy beaver problem. And actually an unlimited amount of mathematical creativity is involved in this. What I'm trying to find is the simplest system in the Platonic world of mathematical ideas that simulates or emulates Darwinian evolution. That's the simplest setup that leads to evolution by natural selection. So this will be the simplest Pythagorean life form. So that's the first step. What I did in metabiology up to now, it's only the beginning of a theory. Most people think that mathematics is a sort of a dull topic, and if we're going to make biology mathematical, that means that the human beings become less interesting and less rich. They just become sort of dull, machine-like mathematical objects. But metabiology doesn't use normal mathematics. It uses what you and I have been calling postmodern mathematics, which really starts with Gödel in 1931 and Turing in 1936. Both of these people are using mathematical methods to do a sort of a psychoanalysis of mathematics. And Gödel is showing there can't be a theory of everything for pure math. There is no axiomatic theory for all of math, which sounded bad, but really means that math is open and creative, not static and closed. Turing is showing that most things in mathematics cannot be calculated, that there are no general methods for calculating a lot of things. So at the time, these were interpreted pessimistically, but metabiology interprets it optimistically. It means shows that the world of mathematics is not static and closed, and it doesn't provide absolute certainty. The world of mathematics is in statu nascendi. It's open and dynamic and requires creativity all the time. And so this is a step in the direction of biology from pure mathematics, from the idea of a Platonic world of ideas in math that is eternal and static with the angels singing. I don't know why people want to think that there should be a mechanical procedure for all of mathematical truth, or a single theory of everything, an axiomatic theory, a formal theory that gives all of mathematical truth. I mean, it would mean that you would have certainty in pure mathematics, but it would also mean that the subject was dead intellectually. It was finished. It was a closed subject. I think it's much more fascinating that pure math is eternally open and in evolution, and requires constantly new principles to understand new mathematical phenomenon. These ideas, these remarks of ours are in general more appreciated when I present them at physics meetings, because physicists know that physics doesn't give certainty, and they're sort of annoyed that pure mathematicians feel that they are superior beings, where everything is black or white and you have absolute certainty. So physicists would like it when I would say that mathematics is quasi-empirical. But mathematicians and logicians would vomit, basically. Either they would say that what I was saying was meaningless garbage, or else they would find it's better that it should be meaningless. But if they actually listened to it, it went so against their view of the world. Logicians like to believe that everything is black and white and clear. And the idea that human beings, even in math, will never have a final truth is deeply upsetting for logicians. But it shouldn't be, because actually I think this is more fun. Otherwise, what are future generations going to do? Just study the great works of the past? You know, the normal interpretation of Darwinian evolution, at least in some places, is really pretty awful. It says the organisms want to be well adapted. So this was like, I remember in the 1950s at school, the children had to be well adapted, they had to be well socialized, they shouldn't rock the boat, they shouldn't be too creative, they should be good citizens. So this is the goal of evolution, according to one interpretation, that the organisms should be well adapted to their environment, and once they're well adapted, they can stagnate. And then evolution would stop. And I think this is an erroneous interpretation of Darwinian evolution. There's the wild idea called the Red Queen principle, that you have to keep evolving all the time, even if there is no radical change in the climate or in the geology, which normally people think is what triggers speciation. The animals you eat are constantly evolving, the people who eat you are constantly evolving, and you have to keep constantly evolving too. And the Red Queen principle is one of the theoretical justifications for sexuality, which otherwise is a mystery. If you believe in shellfish genes, sexuality is a bad idea because you throw away half your genome. People couldn't understand. And with conventional population genetics, people like Dawkins, actually, he at one point is frank and admits that sexuality remains a mystery. And it's almost universal. So it was really, I think John Maynard Smith expressed himself a little more clearly, as he usually does. He said there has to be something fundamentally wrong with our ideas because sexuality doesn't make sense, but it's almost universal. So there's something really big we're missing. And that something very big seems to be the Red Queen principle, which is the reason that in the world of biology, creativity continues all the time, even when you don't have volcanoes or changes in the climate that force the organisms to change.
I think that we should maybe do a break, but then I think that
we're not doing a break. We're continuing.
We're continuing.
Yeah, one of the interesting features of this model that you've just reminded me of, Virginia.
Yes.
Thanks a million. Is that it involves some uncomputable steps. It involves Turing oracles, a weird idea of Turing's from 1939, as a way to imagine computers that can do things that no real computer can do. You give it an oracle that will answer a question for which there is no algorithmic solution, no computable way to answer. And my model does use oracles, actually, because the reason is when you make a random change on a program, and remember, the program wants to calculate the biggest number it can.
Yes.
It's possible that it doesn't calculate anything, that it just calculates away forever. And this would stop the whole evolutionary game. So you have to eliminate programs from consideration if they don't actually calculate anything. Also, there are mutations which don't give you a new organism, algorithm mutations. The basic model in metabiology is an uncomputable model. It cannot be simulated, but you can prove theorems about it. So this is a kind of a theoretical mathematics. And you've pointed out to me, Virginia, that really, in a way, the oracle is where all the creativity is coming from, because the metabiological organisms can do anything that they can calculate. So where can new information come from? It can't be something that you calculate, because the organisms could already do that. So it's coming from an oracle which can answer questions that the answers can't be calculated. It can give you uncomputable things. They're going to be bored by me. Intriguing is what you want to do with this kind of a film. That's more important than conveying accurate, deadly dull information. You want to intrigue people to maybe try to find out more.
Are your eyebrows the same as yesterday?
Doesn't matter. They're white.
No, they're not.
They're not?
They're a mix. This plant actually is very sturdy. It looks very delicate, but
It does look very
but
delicate.
it's looking bad because a grasshopper ate it all up.
Was that what happened?
That was what happened.
This plant is doing beautifully.
Yes.
It's amazing how it starts bright red and then it
Yes.
gets green.
Yes.
Life on an island paradise.
We cannot forget that metabiology is not only about Darwinian evolution, full stop. It's about how new genes appear. Sometimes Darwinian evolution is only seen as something that explains, yes, it does explain the diversity because there are the random mutations, but it mostly explains how and why life is possible, or in the sense of how is it that we survive interacting with
a changing environment?
A changing environment, and also with our competitors. And it is used a lot to explain that, and less than why is it that there is such an enormous diversity? Where is the focus on
the creativity,
understanding?
the major transitions in evolution.
Major transitions, creativity,
like
diversity of life form, from
yeah.
right, you know. So it is basically, and this is what most mathematical efforts are about, like variation of existing genes. Why is it population genetics? So how is it that life survives? How is it that life goes on maintaining itself? Less than how is it that life goes on creating and recreating itself. It's more about maintenance and less about creation.
More about adaptation to the environment and less about endless creativity.
Right.
Okay, well, you're right. I forgot about that. Another way of looking at what metabiology is, it's an attempt to connect mathematical creativity with biological creativity. And mathematical creativity is essential, as was demonstrated by Gödel in 1931 and Turing in 1936. So I'm using ideas that come from them and some other stuff in the cocktail mix, and I'm trying to go from Gödel's incompleteness theorem in a way to Darwin's theory of evolution. So I'm trying to, in my toy model, biological creativity and innovation is not that different from mathematical creativity and innovation. To speak in more general terms, the creativity is something mysterious. Mm-hmm. It's by definition something we don't know how to do. Mm-hmm. So how can you analyze it? Mm-hmm. Well, you can analyze it by giving an algorithm for being creative, because at that point it would stop being creative, it would become mechanical. So the definition of creativity, it's always something that we don't know how to do. And it's mysterious, but you could have a theory of creativity which involves uncomputable elements, mm-hmm. Turing oracles, for example. Mm-hmm. It's a theory that doesn't give you a way to simulate creativity, but gives you a way to prove theorems about it. Mm-hmm. You see? Mm-hmm. So this is the question of how you can make a theory about things that you're not, how you can do things that you're not supposed to be able to do. Mm-hmm. That there are no general methods for doing, mm-hmm. there's no mechanical mm-hmm. procedure for doing. Mm-hmm. So I think these are all, as I said, first steps in the direction of mathematical theories of creativity. And this is how interdisciplinary research works, right? That you're taking an idea, hopefully, it's how it ought to work when it's really fertile.
Exactly.
Is that you really have these different fields speaking to each other and making suggestions to the other field from the perspective of mm-hmm. another field. Mm-hmm. And then you see whether the suggestion works or not.
Or not.
Or not. And this enriches one's understanding for a while, and then you have to come up with a new model once you've gotten all the new ideas from a given model. I think every model has a limited lifetime as a fertile theory, at any rate. It may stay in the textbooks, but what's in the textbooks is awful stuff. It's not the frontier of new ideas, of research. So, but this is how research goes. So what do you think of that, Virginia? Did I sort of hit the main points, or did I miss something important?
I think that as a general explanation, without too much...
The camera is there, yeah.
Oh, but I'm not talking, am I talking to the camera?
I'm sorry, I should have kept my mouth shut.
Yeah, no. It's just that I think that as a first definition of metabiology, this is very good, because I believe it is important that people first see what what motivated metabiology, how it works, and what were your goals.
Right, but how
now
do you see
from
metabiology?
that on, then other people interpreting, oh, but this also shows this, that, and the other. If you start talking about that from the start, then it becomes too confusing.
So this tree has just really spectacular flowers. Here's another tree that has very beautiful flowers. I think spring is over, so there aren't as many flowers as there were before.
Absolutely, and
They're a little wilted, but it's still very beautiful. The island, at its best, is just spectacularly colorful. All the different trees, the bougainvilleas that are behind you, there's a very big one with beautiful flowers. It's very inspiring to see all these inventive life forms, and you wonder how nature created them all. And they're all very beautiful, by the way. And so it's a challenge to understand nature's creativity, nature's inventiveness. Now, that maybe Darwin explains a little bit. Why they're so beautiful is a more subtle question. The notion of beauty, why we find many things in nature beautiful, that's, I think, a deeper question. I don't really know. Some people would say that nature wants to create beauty, but that's not a position that is very popular at this moment. But then you need to find another explanation. So I think it's quite a challenge. This is a good place to see the sunrises from here, or the moonrise. The full moon rising here from this side of the island is a very beautiful sight. I feel the sensuality of the whole country, the tropical atmosphere, the trees and the plants and the flowers are very lush and beautiful, and the people are too. And I responded to that. Coming from New York, the first time I was in Rio, I was 8 years old, and then I was here at 23, and I really felt very stimulated by the the elan vital that I feel in Brazil. The English colonies, the English would send husbands and wives, and they would slaughter the natives. So that's a difference with what happened here in Portugal, in Brazil, where there was a lot of inbreeding. And that produces this remarkable variety of people that you find here. The Africans who came here were from many different parts of Africa. Some are tall, spectacularly beautiful Africans. And you get some amazing mixtures when a beautiful African woman marries a handsome European. The children are unimaginable, never existed before. This is biology trying to find new possibilities, new combinations to create something new. This is what Brazil is all about. This is what sex is all about. This is what making love is all about. It's about creating something new. And in the attraction between people from different races in Brazil is very much about creativity, because inbreeding is bad for human beings. And it's very good, it's very healthy when people make love to somebody who's different. So, because Europeans, for example, have some health problems that the Indians here don't have, and vice versa. So you get mixtures, and they can turn out to be winning combinations, healthier than their source.
Lately, Virginia, it's this idea I have about the brain that I know nothing about, which is that I don't think most of the stuff going on in the brain is at the cellular level, which is, I think, a fashionable view. I think that most of the computing and the memory actually has to be at the molecular level, sort of at the level of DNA and RNA, or at the molecular biology level, where there's a monstrously greater computing and memory capacity than you can have at the neuronal level. And the immune system uses molecular biology intelligently. Of course, every cell does, but But you know, von Neumann said he never saw a computer where the logic, which is the computing part, and the memory were the same technology. So why should neurons do both in the human brain? I think the neurons are just the front end, you know, and all the real heavy-duty work is being done in the unconscious at a much lower level. Although I don't know, my theory doesn't have to explain how the human brain works.
No,
I think it's a possible design for a brain. Right. So again, the fact that I worked in computer engineering and math, and I'm not a professional brain scientist, gives me more freedom to criticize the prevailing view and maybe propose an alternative view, which may be wrong, but you know, most fields tend to get stuck in a paradigm, and people work it to death.
Yes.
And
you are exploring an information-based view on how the brain could work.
yeah,
And even if it's not 100% what happens, it can provide new insight. And this is what I think is the richness of interdisciplinary research.
absolutely.
And even meta-theories, because metabiology is a meta-theory.
Remember how angry someone whose specialty is the brain got at
Yes,
me?
I do.
I hadn't read hundreds of books on the brain like she did, and the stuff I was saying sounded completely crazy to her.
Yes, it's because it's a totally different approach. It's a different framework.
To life.
Well, yes, to life, and also
Become an
as
expert
to-
in the field, read all the books.
Yes,
And
yes.
my attitude is get quickly, you know, it's sort of slash and burn. Quickly get an idea of what's in the field, criticize it to death, propose an alternative view, say maybe people aren't seeing their hand in front of their nose.
Right.
I don't consider myself a specialist, Virginia. I'm not afraid to go into a field where I know very little and criticize the prevailing dogma and think of maybe alternatives, which means I have to be comfortable with not knowing, with not being a specialist. But that gives me more freedom because the people who are
Yes.
specialists are really stuck
Yes.
in all the existing current framework.
Yes.
You know, they've been drilled in it. They've exterminated any thoughts, deviant thoughts that they've had, so they could concentrate on the field. And that may be good for developing engineering, for example, or a field that already you know the basic questions, and you just have to study more, work out the details. But when it's really a frontier where nobody knows what to do, like the brain, the human brain is really largely mysterious in spite of the hundreds of books published every year on this subject, right? There you really need new ideas. You know, so fashion is evil, and I think that talented people should be against fashion, should be against the ideas of the majority. Fight the system, or no, you can't fight it, just ignore it. Try to find a way to ignore it, and do your thing. And you don't care what other people think. You're just looking for truth. And truth is not political success, it's not professional success. It's the wonderful feeling you get when you can understand a little bit better something that fascinated you, that you didn't understand. Like, those are the beautiful moments. The payoff really is when you get a new idea and all of a sudden you realize that it explained something that you were interested in. You know, it lasts very little. I think Feynman says this somewhere. You know, he's searching all his life for new ideas. He knows a number of fundamental problems, like reconciling quantum mechanics with general relativity. And every time he hears of a new idea, or he has a new idea, he asks, can that settle it? And then he says you have a wonderful week or two that once you get the new idea, you run with it, you develop it, you look at its consequences. That's sort of more systematic. You know, you have to have good technique for that. The inspiration, who knows where it comes from. Yeah. And the problem with all this, though, is that you have these few weeks of euphoria where you are developing a new idea. You have a new idea and you're developing its consequences. And what do you do the rest of your life? Well, the rest of your life is you have love affairs, you have marriages, you travel to different countries, and you're looking for new ideas everywhere. But you can't force yourself to have them. You can just read a lot and not feel that you have to force yourself to be creative, like the universities want and the funding agencies want. You know, you have to. They want a steady stream of sausages coming out of the sausage machine. This may be good for routine science, but it's not good for creating a new field. For a paradigm shift, will never come from normal science or from an industrial lab.
Right.
You know, you have to be crazy. Now, being crazy is a necessary but not sufficient condition. You know, there are a lot of people who are crazy and they're just crazy. They don't create a new field of science. But I think craziness is a prerequisite for being able to produce a paradigm shift, because to disagree with the way everybody else is thinking about some field you have to be crazy. No sane person would do that. It's risky.
Yes.
And there's some of us who can't help ourselves, though, for personal reasons. We are this way. And if we're lucky, you can create a new field. If you're unlucky, you're just a crazy person, right? But I think this has something to do with creativity. You should write a book
Me?
on creativity or on...
Yes, I don't know, maybe.
Or maybe a
We
book
could
about
write a book
our
together
marriage.
eventually.
No, once
I
I'm
don't
gone,
know.
you can write a book. What was it like
I
living
see.
with this crazy person? What is it like seeing a new field created, metabiology
I
being
see.
created
no,
in
but
front
I'd
of you?
rather write it with you.
Yeah, and maybe Virginia wants to say something
No, I
about
don't want
oracles.
to say anything. No, I'll talk about
You know,
it
Virginia's
tomorrow.
very good. I don't know why she doesn't want to
No,
talk.
I'll talk
It's
tomorrow at
nicer
home.
listening to her than
No,
listening to me.
Listen, Greg. You have
Tomorrow,
a stronger voice here in the outdoors.
Let's go
I
and
think it's
let's go
better.
into see Rio in the
Let's go.
distance.
Let's
Okay.
go see Rio.
That is the Corcovado, which means jorobado in Spanish. It means humpback. And on top of that is the sculpture of Christ the Redeemer, which is the symbol of Rio de Janeiro. And Rio is a very big mix of poverty with wealthy people in a way that you don't have, say, in Sao Paulo, where the wealthy people are downtown and the poor people are outside. In Rio, everything is mixed together. And there is Christ letting everybody know they're all part of the human race, this wonderful mixture that is Rio de Janeiro. That's the Pico de Tijuca, and that's actually the highest point in Rio de Janeiro. And the view from there is spectacular. And a group of us would go from the university once a year to the top and recite poetry at the top of the mountain, and then rip up the poems and toss them into the air. The view on a clear day is spectacular.
The education system, societies tend to bring children's spontaneity and creativity down, and that did not happen to you.
And you're supposed to specialize in an area and spend the rest of your life working on it.
For so
and
many
I'm
reasons, you're supposed to have a
curious about
specific
many
behavior,
right.
specific professional interests, and you haven't gone down that road. So
No.
maybe that is why some people may think you're a child.
Yeah, with the
but
years,
I don't think so at all.
With the years, I got more interdisciplinary, not less. More openly interdisciplinary. Got interested in Leibniz, in philosophy, in biology and evolution, in artificial intelligence and how the brain works. Went
And
back
I
to
think
that.
that the artistic element in your thinking and in your decision making is also very present. Beauty is very important.
Well, ideas have to be beautiful.
Yes.
It's you said it once, Virginia, an aesthetic criteria for truth. It's very true in pure math. It's very true in everything. And I think that's why we have a house here in Paqueta also. It's a small island. It's really seems like Brazil a century ago. And it's very beautiful. The views of the mountains, the view of the water, the beaches, the trees, the horses and carriages in the street. Mathematics for me is something sensual and beautiful. As a child, I was sort of confused, and even as a teenager, I sort of confused eroticism and sexuality with mathematics, because the ideas have to be beautiful. There's something erotic and sensual in a beautiful mathematical idea, like in a beautiful woman, beautiful music, a beautiful mountain, or to me, they're all connected. They leak into each other. And this is all part of the inspiration. I think one needs to draw on the life force, on beauty, to create more beauty, to look for more beauty.
This was something we talked about
Did we?
when we had lunch for the first time. You mentioned
Did we really?
Plato's Banquet.
I did?
Yes, you did.
Yes.
Yes.
We talked about all of this on our first
well,
lunch
yes, sort of.
here in Rio, right?
Here in Rio, yes.
When we met
And
at
you
that
mentioned
meeting
it, exactly.
on Gödel and physics and cosmology.
That's right.
And I think we talked also about Hindu polytheism and the sensuality
did.
of Hindu art.
Yes.
The goddess, the representations of goddesses,
Yes.
for example,
Yes.
that in the West you don't have, right? But in a polytheistic Hindu religion, You have these lush, erotic sculptures and goddesses and female gods.
The relation to the body and to sensuality, how it differs in different conceptual frameworks, different religions, societies.
Yeah.
And this is what I think that you picked up at the beach, what we feel
In
here in
1955
Brazil,
in Rio,
yes, is that people are at
Copacabana.
ease with their bodies.
Right.
The body is not the place for sin. The body
Right.
is a place for enjoyment of being alive.
You're part of nature. You have a body.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah, I
So-
felt that. I felt that
Yes.
in Rio, even as an 8-year-old, I think, and even more when I came back at the age of 23 to Rio and had my first information theoretic incompleteness theorem.
Right.
It was in Rio the week before Carnival, actually. Carnival is an amazing experience. Well, sex is all about information. You know, that's what sexuality is about. It's exchanging information. So these things are all connected.
Right. Yes.
So is it awful being married to someone who is trying to be creative?
No, I don't think so.
Well, also
see.
you studied you have degrees in philosophy of science, history of science,
Well, yes.
and interdisciplinary thinking, which I've been doing without knowing what it was since I was a child, because the definition of randomness mixes ideas from information theory, statistical physics, computers, logic, and metabiology mixes a whole bunch of fields. And this is what you were thinking about until you met a person who lives that way.
Yes.
That's me, right? So this has been grist for your
Yes.
mill, I guess.
Yes.
Seeing
yes.
interdisciplinary
It's
creativity
an
in
interesting
action.
Coincidence. Yes.
So that's been a lot of fun.
It has. It has.
Interacting with you. I think that I couldn't have done metabiology. I'm sure I wouldn't have had metabiology without you. I would have stayed in Westchester and done nothing. Ideas that is also flexible and plastic. That's what's left out of the system. And I guess digital philosophy or digital physics is a step in that direction. But it's not going all the way. In this house lived a painter, Augusto Pereira da Silva, who was the first administrator of the Isle of Paqueta. He was born in 1897 and died in 1963. And also here lived Silvio Caldas. It's some kind of poet or singer of songs.
Yes.
Seresteiro
Yes,
in
he
Brazil.
was.
He was born here in 1908 and died in 1998. 90 years. So living on this island seems to be good for your longevity. In Westchester, where we have a house near the IBM Research Center, all the houses are required to be roughly the same. Every area has to have a certain size of house with a certain amount of land. Here it's a complete jumble. It's anarchy. This is called creative anarchy. I love it. Isn't one of these amazing ecology trees?
People need a pre-established ontological ground.
They need somewhere to
step
stand
on.
on,
To step on.
secure ground.
Absolutely.